Hello everyone, and welcome to BattleTech Faction Briefings. We are continuing our journey through the wild history of the Wolf's Dragoons. This is the third video in the series. Check out my BattleTech Faction Briefings playlist to find all the videos. Today, we are looking at a unit that had to go back to basics, and was sometimes called the Shadow Wolves. More often than not, they are backing up other units, but today, they will get their due. This time, we are looking at Wolf's Dragoons, Gamma Regiment. Like all of Wolf's Dragoons, Gamma uses the same mercenary emblem of a black snarling wolf on a red background. The main regimental emblem is a Greek Gamma symbol. They put the mercenary emblem on the left shoulders of their mechs, and the regimental emblem on the right leg, with the battalion emblem center on the chest. Each battalion has their own insignia as well. Able has a lightning bolt in a stylized sphere, but later changed it to two lupine eyes in a dark sphere. Bravo has a humanoid turtle holding a hammer. Charlie has a black cat in a mech cockpit. Their colors are solid midnight blue or dark blue, depending on the source, giving them a very cool look. Like the rest of the Dragoons, they paint their fighters in bright colors. Their elementals use blue and gray camo, with a wolf on their helmet painted in a blue-gray color with light blue eyes. Like the other Wolf's Dragoons, Gamma Regiment has a long and interesting history. If you want to skip spoilers, then go to the time listed. The story of Gamma begins with the rest of the Wolf's Dragoons. They were part of the clan recon team that was sent to the Inner Sphere. Gamma was made up of mostly Freebirth clan warriors from Clan Wolf. The Dragoons arrived in the Inner Sphere in 3005, and took a contract with House Davian shortly after their arrival. In February 3006, Gamma, Beta, and Delta regiments, along with Zeta Battalion and the 7th Commando, were sent to Halloran V, a Capellan world that was used as a staging area for raids into the Federated Suns. Halloran was defended by Mirian's Highlanders and the Blackwind Lancers. The first move was to have Zeta's assault mechs rush in and push the Capellan forces from their stronghold. Their next move was to have Beta, Gamma, and Zeta hit the enemy's left flank, while Delta distracted the enemy on the right flank. Beta moved in first with an incendiary attack on the forest, and their heavy and assault mechs moving in during the chaos. They hit Mirian's Highlanders hard, and Gamma moved in to push the attack forward. The next day, the Highlanders rallied and held off attacks by Beta and Gamma. Then the Commandos moved in to assist Delta in the distraction of the Blackwind Lancers. They pushed the Lancers into the Highlanders, causing chaos in the Liao ranks. The Liao forces retreated even after their reinforcements arrived. After 5 days of fighting, the Wolf's Dragoons had won their first major battle. In January 3007, they were stationed on New Valencia with Delta and Epsilon when 5 regiments of McCarran's armored cavalry showed up. Gamma Commander Korsht took command and had the Dragoons' dependents evacuated before the enemy arrived. Then the Dragoons took up defensive positions as they endured the siege. The nearby city took heavy damage during the fighting. The Dragoons held the line despite heavy enemy numbers, but the tide did not turn until 3 regiments of Iridani light horse mercenaries arrived as support. Realizing things were going badly, McCarran's armored cavalry reluctantly retreated. The next big operation was in 3008. All regiments of the Dragoons teamed up with 5 elite Davian units to attack New Aragon. The world of New Aragon was guarded by 8 Liao regiments. The Capellans had taken the world earlier that year, thus this was a necessary counterattack. In preparation for the attack, small raiding parties were sent out to various planets to function as distractions. The Avalon Hussars and Crucius Lancers took on the 1st and 2nd Ariana Fusiliers, Fremont's Cuirassiers, and Tremaldi's Secutors. All 5 regiments of the Wolf's Dragoons were teamed up with the 4th Deneb Light Cavalry and faced off with the 1st and 2nd Kearney Highlanders, McCormick's Fusiliers, and the Waco Rangers. Their arrival was met with disaster, as the 4th Deneb's dropships took damage from the aerospace fighters and that damage led to the unit being out of the battle for a week as they repaired and reorganized. The Dragoons' dropships were hit as well, but they recovered and pushed forward with the attack. The Dragoons tried to soften up the Highlanders with artillery, but still had trouble breaking their lines. As the battle continued, Delta Company lost their commander, Colonel Travis King, during a retreat, where his archer was hit in the back by aerospace fighters. The other Davian forces were also having trouble. This led Jamie Wolfe to come up with a plan. He sent the 7th Commandos with light mechs from Alpha and Gamma regiments to drop behind the defenders of El Diablo Pass. Baker Battalion of Gamma was chosen due to their skill. The flanking strike was a success, and Zeta Battalion hit the enemies from the front. The Waco Rangers took heavy damage, including the death of their recon commander, Lieutenant John Waco, who was accidentally killed after ejecting from his Wasp and being stepped on by accident. The rest of the Dragoons followed Zeta and easily dealt with McCormick's Fusiliers. After that, the Capellan forces were overrun, and the world was won for the Federated Sons. The remainder of their contract with House Davian was limited. A good portion of 3009 was used for a return trip to Clan Space to report findings. Then in 3010, the Dragoons took up a contract with the Capellan Confederation. Gamma would be stationed on Principia. While working with House Liao, Gamma was sent out on a defensive mission on Wallachia. They went with other Dragoons to defend the world from a Free Worlds League offensive. Delta took the lead with mobile defense. Meanwhile, Gamma and Epsilon worked to strike at the Marik rear lines, destroying their supplies. However, FWLM reinforcements arrived, which caused the Dragoons to have to give up the world. Gamma then defended Scarborough, as the planet was attacked by the Fusiliers of Orente. The Dragoons were ready and used similar defensive tactics that they used on Wallachia. However, they were outmaneuvered by the Fusiliers. Delta and Epsilon couldn't get a good position, which exposed Gamma on the Samho Plains. Colonel Crocht called for reinforcements, but none were available. Gamma endured 6 attacks over the course of 3 days, wearing out their soldiers and supplies. Gamma used heavy mechs to draw the attention of the enemy and lighter units to flank the enemy, which helped keep them standing but didn't win the fight. On a foggy day, Gamma made their move to escape their bad position. As the fog cleared, Dragoon Aerofighters came in to assist. Gamma was able to escape, but they took heavy losses in the process. The Dragoons fled the world, but the damage they inflicted caused delays in the League offensive. In 3012, Gamma was moved to Shiro 3 to hold off the Marik offensive. This would be the final battle of the campaign. The Dragoons were teamed up with several Capellan units to fight the Marik forces. The battle was successful, but Zeta Commander Frank Wells died during the defensive operation. In 3014, a deal was struck between Maximilian Liao and Anton Marik. These events would trigger the Marik Civil War, and the Dragoons were brought in to assist Anton's faction. Gamma was part of the campaign that was aiming to take Atreus. The Dragoons were sent to Emrys 4, as it was a key world Anton Marik needed in order to win the war. Emrys was guarded by the 6th and 9th Marik Militia. After an intense Aerofighter battle, Alpha and Gamma went up against the 6th as they were defending the Star Corps Industries factory. Gamma was set as a distraction force, while Alpha tried to find weaknesses in the enemy lines. During the battle, Gamma would face off with the 6th Militia's Assault Battalion, the Death Watch Brigade. It took 2 weeks of fighting to find a weakness in the Marik defensive line. When a path was found, Colonel Wolfe asked for volunteers to navigate it. Lieutenant Natasha Kerensky led the team through abandoned drainage tunnels to get behind enemy lines. Alpha then rushed the enemy, and the 6th Heavy Battalion was destroyed, and the other battalions were chased down by Alpha. Meanwhile, Gamma took control of the factory while fighting militia stragglers. The world fell shortly after that, and helped push the rebel cause forward. Later that year, Beta, Gamma, and Kerensky's team formed Task Force Condor, a relief force that was to assist in protecting the flank of the rebel advance. Their first mission was on Matharan, where the 12th Atrean Dragoons were pinned down by the 11th Atrean Dragoons and Smithson's Chinese bandits. The bandits fled upon learning that the Wolf's Dragoons were coming. The Wolf's Dragoons used a drop operation to surround the 11th, who surrendered upon realizing that they were heavily outnumbered. The next mission took Task Force Condor to Callaway 6. The team was expanded with the remains of the 12th Atrean Dragoons and the 3rd Ducal Guards. The world was a staging point for the next phase of the Loyalist counterattack. The defenders were made up of 5 major regiments: the 1st, 2nd, and 6th Orente Hussars, 2nd Fusiliers of Orente, and the 6th Defenders of Andurian. They had plenty of resources and access to an Earthworks Incorporated factory. The task force was under attack upon their arrival. The Atrean Dragoons lost a dropship, destroying an entire company. Kerensky's company cleared a landing zone for the remaining forces. Beta and Gamma worked together to take on the 6th Orente Hussars and the 6th Defenders of Andurian. The Hussars were defeated, but the 2nd Fusiliers arrived to assist the 6th Defenders. Things got worse when the 1st and 2nd Hussars drove a wedge between the Dragoons and the other rebel forces. The 3rd Ducal Guard surrendered, and the Dragoons began their retreat. They had an orderly withdrawal, but this was a major setback for Anton's faction. Gamma's next mission was on Vanra, where Alpha, Gamma, and the 4th Regulan Hussars faced off with a Loyalist counterattack. They battled the remains of the 6th and 9th Marik Militia, along with the 1st Orloff Grenadiers, and 3 regiments of mechanized infantry. Things were going well, with Alpha pushing forward, and about to drive a wedge into the Loyalist forces. However, morale had been bad for the 4th Regulan Hussars, and getting news that the Principality of Regulus had sided with Janos Marik made them change sides and attack Gamma Regiment. Colonel Wolf disengaged his troops from their battle and charged the Hussars, destroying the turncoats and saving Gamma. After that, both Alpha and Gamma turned their attention to the militia forces. The militia units were nearly wiped out, and the Orloff Grenadiers fled the world. After a couple months of recovery, the whole of the Wolf's Dragoons headed out to attack McKenna. It was guarded by the 1st and 2nd Regulan Hussars. The Hussars took heavy losses and fled the world. After hearing that Liaison Officer Joshua Wolf and 27 Dragoon dependents were being held hostage by Anton Marik, the Dragoons rushed to New Delos. Shortly after their arrival, they learned that the hostages had been executed. Nearly all Dragoon commands were on New Delos for the attack, the exception being Epsilon, who was guarding the remaining Dragoon dependents on second chance. The remaining Dragoons faced off with the 18th Marik Militia and the 1st, 2nd, and 5th Ducal Guard. The 1st Ducal Guard fled after facing the Dragoons, allowing Alpha and Gamma to make their way toward Anton's fortress. Anton ordered the forest to the rear of his fortress torched, so that no one could use it as an attack route. This forced Alpha and Gamma to fight through a narrow pass. A team led by Captain Natasha Kerensky braved the forest fire and made their way into the rear of the fortress, destroying anything in their path. By the time Alpha and Gamma broke the enemy lines, Anton Marik was dead and the Civil War was over. After the war had ended, the Dragoons took up a contract with Janos Marik and the Free Worlds League. It took some time for the Dragoons to recover and rebuild. During this time, they did small raids on the Lyran border. The next major battle would be the assault on Hesperus in 3019. The mission was set to capture the Defiance Industries factory on Hesperus II, a core factory for the LCAF. The mission route to Hesperus was made up of an indirect path and seemingly random raids on Lyran worlds. The ruse may have worked, but a Lyran spy discovered the goal of the mission. The Lyrans moved in several units to defend the factory, including the 6th, 15th, and 24th Lyran Guards, the 3rd Royal Guards, He's Hotheads, and Hansen's Rough Riders. On the 6th of June, Alpha, Beta, and Gamma endured heavy air cover while landing on the world. However, they were scattered and far from their objectives. This gave the Lyran forces plenty of time to dig in and prepare to hold off the Dragoons. Alpha, Gamma, and Zeta would attempt to cross the Erawan River. where they braved aerospace and hovercraft raids, as well as long-range attacks from the defenders. The defense was intense, and despite many different assault attempts, Wolfe's Dragoons were forced to flee the world. After the battle, Colonel Jamie Wolfe went to clan space again to gather new soldiers and equipment. Meanwhile, the Dragoons opened up their recruitment to outside soldiers for the first time. In the spring of 3020, the Wolfe's Dragoons took up a contract with the Lyran Commonwealth. They were sent to Chukchi 3 on the Combine border. Due to issues with the LCAF, Jamie Wolfe used an escape clause in his contract to leave the Commonwealth in 3022. After that, they took up a contract with the Draconis Combine. Not long after that, Alpha, Gamma, and Delta went to Quinton. They did a feint attack to draw out the Davian forces. Then they continued to pull back in order to bait the Davian troops, while a second force went after the planetary industrial complex. Gamma was kept in reserve, but Colonel Korsht and her command lance were part of the ground forces, assisting as needed. During the battle, Coordinator Takashi Karita and members of the Sword of Light joined the fight. This led to tensions between the mercenaries and their client. Within a short period of time, the Dragoons claimed victory. The victory was a key factor in the development of the Ryukin as a Karita unit. Their next big operation was in 3025, as part of a distraction for the Galtor campaign. Beta, along with Gamma and Zeta, went to Deschler. Beta was sent out to raid the factories, while Gamma attacked the Raman Draconis March Militia. It was expected to be an easy raid, but the 4th Davian Guards faced off with Beta Regiment. Gamma made quick moves against the militia as they took their aerospace facilities and pushed them away from the main attack force. Despite that, it took months of fighting with Beta and Gamma struggling against the Davian Guards. Things turned when the 7th Commando were sent in to disrupt the Guards' rear lines. Finally, Beta with Zeta support were able to capture the factories. However, the factories had been stripped of all valuable material and research, making this a very hollow victory. While the Dragoons did take Deschler, the Galtor campaign failed and the planet was cut off. The Dragoons were given the order to withdraw. However, they did heavy damage to the 4th Davian Guards, which was considered a success to some extent. Gamma and Beta were stationed on Misery in 3025, which was a miserable base to hold. From Misery, they made raids into the Draconis March region of the Federated Suns. As the years passed, Colonel Korsht grew more and more bothered by the Karita treatment of the Dragoons. Both in 26 and 27, at Dragoon meetings, she pushed the Dragoons to break contract. As the Dragoons' contract came to an end in 3028, things got out of hand as Karita made a move against the Dragoons in order to force them to stay. This pushed all the Dragoons to gather on Misery to have a decisive battle with House Karita. They faced off with 4 regiments of the Ryukin, the 17th and 21st Gale Dawn Regulars, and the 8th Sword of Light. Gamma went up against the 17th Gale Dawn Regulars. It was a difficult fight, but the 17th were destroyed. However, Able Battalion was heavily damaged, and Able Commander Major Ikeo Takashima and Baker Commander Major Mary Campbell both died in the battle. Colonel Korsht lost her mech, and the rescue operation wiped out her command lance. Despite the heavy losses, the Dragoons would win the Battle of Misery. The victory at Misery took a large toll on the Wolfe's Dragoons, as they suffered over 50% losses. After Misery, Gamma was reorganized to function as a unit again, with only 52 mech warriors, about a third as much as a regiment should have. Gamma, along with Epsilon, were sent to Harrow's Sun. It wasn't much longer before the 8th Gale Dawn Regulars attacked. 2 companies were sent out to draw the Regulars into a trap. Using natural defenses, the weakened Dragoons were able to hold the line. The Karita forces fought back, and the Dragoons took heavy fire, while the Regulars only had minimal losses. As the battle continued, the use of hit-and-run tactics and defensive positioning allowed Gamma to survive against the Karita numbers. Karita forces got the upper hand when their infantry tunneled into the Dragoon defensive position to cause havoc as the Karita battle mechs attacked the front line. The Dragoon forces retreated and left the world in 3029, having played a defensive role for over a year. By the time they retreated, Gamma had lost 30 mech warriors, with 10 injured, leaving them with only 12 functional warriors. All the Dragoon units gathered on crossing. By the time the creative forces arrived, there were 18 functional Gamma mech warriors. In total, the Dragoons only had enough mechs to field a regiment's worth of soldiers, with some support from the 10th Deneb Light Cavalry. The creative forces arrived in September 3029 with 4 regiments of Gale Dawn regulars. The group was made up of the 5th, 8th, 12th, and 16th Gale Dawn regulars, all of whom had previous encounters with the Dragoons during the war. However, all 4 units had only been brought back to full strength with fresh green soldiers, but they had an elite mech company as part of their team called the Sword of Void. Jamie Wolf called the approaching enemies and gave them a meeting location. This was to protect the civilian population of the world. The Dragoons took a defensive position and held off the Gale Dawn regulars. The Sword of Void attempted to drop on the Dragoons, but they held their ground as the 10th Deneb came in and attacked the Gale Dawn forces from behind. Then Zeta Battalion finally showed up, having fully recovered and arriving on rented Mule-class dropships. This allowed the Dragoons to take out the Sword of Void. The 5th Gale Dawn were destroyed as they tried to retreat. The 16th surrendered to Natasha Kerensky. The 8th and 12th attempted to retreat while being ravaged by Inferno rocket-equipped infantry. The surviving Kurita soldiers fled the world. The Dragoons had won, despite extreme odds against them. After the end of the battle, only 3 mech warriors of Gamma Regiment were still standing, with 6 wounded, which stopped Gamma from being a functional unit. The Wolf's Dragoons were so heavily damaged, they needed years to recover. After the war, Hans Davian also awarded the World of Outreach to the Dragoons, which became their home base. Colonel Wolf did not go back to the clans for supplies this time. Instead, he chose to pull his troops away from the clan way of life. New Dragoon troops came from 2 sources. The first was war orphans from the 4th Succession War, who could be trained in the Dragoon ways. The other source was using clan artificial breeding technology to produce true-born warriors for the Wolf's Dragoons. The Dragoons would get transferred to CAF in preparation for the War of 39. However, CAF was attacked by the Ryukin Ni and Ryukin San in hopes of preventing the Dragoons from attacking Dairon. The fighting did not last long, and the Dragoons took minimal losses, but the Ryukin forces were able to damage the Davian base and sunder some of their supplies. After that, the Ryukin left, having bought time for the Combine to prepare proper defenses for the FedCom attack. After the war, Gamma returned to Outreach, where they became a garrison force. When the clan forces arrived, all the units of the Wolf's Dragoons were called back to Outreach to discuss what to do next. In the end, it was decided to help the Inner Sphere. Thus, all leaders of the successor states were called to Outreach. After the meeting, the Dragoons were sent to Luthien in order to protect the Draconis Combine capital from the clans. On January 4th, 3052, the attack on Luthien began. The 2 clans came with full forces, made up of 26 different units. The planet was guarded by the Genyosha, Otomo, 1st Sword of Light, 2nd Legion of Vega, multiple squadrons of local defense forces, along with the Kellhounds and Wolf's Dragoons. It was an intense back and forth between both sides, as the most elite forces the Combine could throw at the clans struggled to hold the line. After 2 days of intense fighting and many lives sacrificed, the Inner Sphere forces were victorious. After Luthien, Gamma Regiment would start a decline under the leadership of their new colonel. His troubled unit would get the attention of Colonel Wolf, and as more troubles added up, Colonel Perella would side with Elsin Novacat and Alpin Wolf in their coup attempt. When fighting broke out between the Dragoons, Gamma teamed up with Kappa, an outreach support team. They faced off with the Spider's Web, but Gamma's lack of skill was clear in the fight. However, the Gamma numbers did keep the Spiders pinned down. Despite that, Colonel Perella's mismanagement of the unit gave Jamie Wolf's faction an advantage. Things would begin to fall apart for the coup as Maeve Wolf challenged Alpin Wolf to a one-on-one duel. Alpin failed against the Spider's Web commander. Enraged, Perella led his troops against the Spiders again, but the Kappa forces switched sides. This led Gamma into a panic, and when looking to Elsin Novacat for support, communications were cut off. When the Dragoon Civil War ended, Colonel Perella fled and was never seen again. Gamma veteran Erwin Tyrell took up the task of rebuilding the broken and low morale unit. It took time to rebuild, but over that time, Gamma started to become a notable unit once again. Colonel Tyrell brought in true-born warriors for the battalion commanders and took steps to encourage friendly competition amongst his troops. The first test for the rebuilt Gamma was on Coventry, where they faced off with the Clan Jade Falcon alongside Delta Regiment. They got backup from the 71st Light Horse Regiment of the Iridani Light Horse, the Waco Rangers, and the Crazy Eights. Once on World, they met up with the Coventry Militia and 10th Sky Rangers. They lost quite a bit of soldiers and equipment during the fighting, but the battle was considered a success after the Dragoons offered the Falcon leadership Hijira. It took time to recover from the fights with the Falcons. By 3061, Gamma was shifted to a training unit and were able to build up their skills while honing those of new recruits and Sibco Dragoons. They also helped train members of the Allied Mercenary Command. In 3066, Alpha began training with Gamma and Delta as they were assigned to be on the Ghost Bear Dominion border. This helped expand the skills of Gamma before they started taking on new missions. A key mission that Gamma took was in 3067, when they were sent to Tikhonov alongside a couple warships to help protect the world from Duke George Hassek's Capellan March forces. Gamma's efforts drove away the Davian threat. At this point, Gamma was at 140% of normal strength, and all of their mechs were of clan quality. They were still on Tikhonov when the Word of Blake-sponsored mercenary squad attacked Outreach. A month later, General Maeve Wolf cut off their contract and commanded Gamma to return to Outreach. When Gamma got to Outreach, they took over the planetary defenses, holding the broken forces together. Colonel Tyrell also ordered the non-Allied Mercenary Command units to leave the world before the Word of Blake could counterattack. After the failed attack on Mars, the Word of Blake took aim at Outreach once again. They sent the 6th and 10th Divisions to wipe out the Dragoons. The Blakist warships easily took out orbital defenses, and they landed with little trouble. The Dismal Disinherited and Gamma Regiment held the line as the Wolf Spiders and Broadsword Legion flanked the Blakists. The battle was going in favor of the anti-Blake forces, but the Broadsword Legion turned traitor and attacked the Spiders. They held the line long enough for Alpha to arrive as support. With things turning against the Blake forces, an atomic attack was ordered. The Dismal Disinherited were wiped out, and the Dragoons were hurt bad. Maeve Wolf pulled out the remaining Dragoons. They would go to Ark Royal to rebuild and recover. However, some members of Gamma stayed behind to fight a guerrilla war against the occupation forces. Unlike Alpha and Beta, who became training regiments, Gamma was rebuilt and sent on missions early into the Dark Age. They went out on minor raids to help rebuild the reputation of the Wolf's Dragoons. In 3039, the Wolf's Dragoons took up a contract with House Karita for the first time in over 100 years. Colonel Brubaker, the Dragoon commander, wanted to leave the Lyran Commonwealth to assert the independence of the Wolf's Dragoons. Gamma was one of the regiments sent into the Reach region of space between the Draconis Combine and Federated Suns. They arrived on Marlowe's Rift, which began as a quick battle, followed by months of mop-up work. They were then sent to Thestria as the campaign continued. Over the years, they would battle on multiple different planets as the Draconis forces moved their way towards New Avalon. In 3146, 3 regiments of Dragoons were sent to New Avalon to assist in the Draconis Combine invasion of the Federated Suns capital. Dragoon aerospace assets assisted with the invasion, and the Dragoons worked as shock troops before being pulled back. As the battle continued, the Dragoons fought alongside DCMS units against the 1st Avalon Hussars, Davian Assault Guards, and New Avalon Crucis March Militia. While they didn't do much fighting after the initial attack, On the 11th week of battle, the Dragoons were moved to the front lines and crushed the 2nd Robinson Rangers. This helped push a Draconis Combine victory, as many Davian officials and some of their military units fled the world not long after. By 3150, Gamma was stationed on Parma, but due to their lack of discipline, they got in trouble with the Kurita leadership. This led to several members of Gamma being put in jail. Things got worse when Clan Wolf recruiter Star Captain Marota Kerensky came to talk the Dragoons into assisting Clan Wolf in the defense of Terra. This led to a fight between the Dragoons, as some of them wanted to join Clan Wolf and others did not. By the end of the fighting, both sides compromised and decided to drop the Kurita contract and join Clan Wolf. The Wolf's Dragoons were brought to Terra to assist in the Ill Clan trial. They were made part of Task Force Athena, a backup unit that was used in the final stages of the battle. Alpha led the charge against the Jade Falcon Delta Galaxy, with Gamma providing backup. Then, Gamma would work with the other Dragoons to try to break the Falcon's Alpha Galaxy. During that push, Colonel Brubaker was wounded by the Falcon Guards. Still, the Dragoons kept pushing forward. However, Alaric Ward, Khan of Clan Wolf, commanded them to pull back. This maneuver led to more deaths amongst the Wolf's Dragoons. By the end of the trial, the Dragoons had taken 81% losses. After the Clan Wolf victory, the Dragoons were given gray blood ribbons. They were also not allowed to rejoin the clan, and were given 30 pieces of silver for their work. This enraged General Brubaker and the rest of the Dragoons. He left and joined up with the remainder of the unit on Savannah. Upon his arrival, Brubaker, along with several others, were arrested for their part in bringing the Dragoons to Terra. Brubaker was found guilty and sentenced to exile or honorable death. Brubaker chose death by his own gun. Gamma Commander Colonel Cruz, on the other hand, was found guilty and executed by firing squad. After dealing with politics, it came time to deal with the remains of the wrecked mercenaries. Gamma was in bad shape, with most of their battalions weak, and only one mech of Baker Battalion still functional. Due to their losses, the unit was disbanded. Their soldiers and gear were given to Zeta Battalion to help rebuild that unit. Gamma will never get the glory of Alpha, Beta, or Zeta. Yet, they were key in many strategies the Dragoons used in their years of fighting across the inner sphere. Gamma is like the bass section in a jazz band. They don't get the cheers of the trumpets or the saxes, but they are key in keeping the band on tempo. Gamma Regiment is the unsung hero of the Wolf's Dragoons, as they provided backup and extra training whenever called upon. Then again, they have two eras where they had terrible commanders, so draw your own conclusions. While not as prestigious as other regiments, there are plenty of heroes amongst Gamma Regiment. Wilhelmina Korst, the first Gamma Regiment commander, a freebirth warrior who was given command despite her young age. She was brash and held the team together during the hard times. She remained in command until after Luthien. She piloted a Warhammer that was destroyed on Misery. She then piloted a Marauder II that once belonged to able commander Takashima. Ikeo Takashima, an Inner Sphere soldier who joined up with the Dragoons on New Delos as an armor commander. However, he would get promoted to a mech warrior. He was a skilled tactician who rose in rank to the company commander of Able Battalion. He would die in the Battle of Misery. He piloted a Marauder II. Hal Bloomberg, a noble who lost his land and title during the Marik Civil War. He became a member of a company command lance within Charlie Battalion. However, after Misery, he was promoted to the regimental command lance. He pilots his family's Blackjack. Neil Perella, an original Dragoon who fought with Delta and became their Charlie Battalion commander. He was known for his drinking, which grew worse over time. He rose in ranks and got transferred to Gamma after the Fourth Succession War, and took command of Gamma after the Battle of Luthien. He joined the rebellion against Jamie Wolfe in 3054 and would be declared MIA at the end of the conflict. He piloted a Marauder, then later an Imp, and finally a Timberwolf Mad Cat at the end of his career. Alpin Wolf, the grandson of Jamie Wolf, and a lieutenant in Gamma Regiment. He was hot-blooded and lacking in skill, which led to him being manipulated into being a figurehead for the Dragoon Civil War. He was killed in a duel. He piloted a Thor Summoner Omnimech. Erwin Tyrell, an original Dragoon who was part of Abel's Fire Lance. He took charge of the remaining Gamma Regiment after the Dragoon Civil War. He was a great leader, but died during the Blake attack on Outreach. After his death, he was honored by having a training academy named after him on Ark Royal. He piloted a Wolverine that was destroyed on Misery, then a Cataphract that was destroyed on Crossing. Finally, he piloted a WVR-7D Wolverine. Nicholas Cruz. He became Gamma Commander prior to the Federated Suns campaign in the late 3130s. He did not instill discipline in his troops. He led the rebellion against Brubaker when offered the chance to return to Clan Wolf. He killed Sakon Ryan Pride of Clan Jade Falcon. After the Ill Clan trial, he was arrested for mutiny and executed. He piloted a Tundra Wolf. Thomas Brubaker, a skilled soldier who became the commander of the Black Cat Battalion in 3125. Later, he became the commander of the Wolf's Dragoons in 3137. He made the choice to work with the Draconis Combine in order to expand the Dragoon reputation. After a brief mutiny, he also decided to join the Ill Clan trial. He would be wounded on Terra, and after the trial, he was arrested and took his own life. Originally, he piloted an Annihilator, but later he would pilot a Tundra Wolf. Like all Dragoons, Gamma Regiment has mechs of all types and sizes, and a good collection of Star League era and clan mechs. Gamma has had many different roles over the years. They began as urban combat specialists. After the clan invasion, they were specialists in night and low visibility combat, and finally, by the Dark Age, they were a line unit that mostly played defense. No matter the era, they tended to use close combat units, rather than long-range bombardment. Each of the mech battalions used the same composition of a command lance with 3 standard companies. The battalions had different aspects of the same job. Able Battalion, often called Cloak of Darkness, functioned as the lead unit for any mission they were going on. Baker, known as the Juggernauts, was made up of heavy and assault mechs. Charlie, called the Black Cats, were built around speed and mobility. Devil Battalion was their armor and went under their primary title of the 15th Dragoon Heavy Armor, with a command lance backed by 3 companies. Eagle Battalion, called Guess, because of their title as Gamma Elemental Squad, GES. They had a command point with 3 trinaries. Their aerospace was called the Howlers, which had a command element and 3 wings of fighters. Gamma had peaks and valleys in terms of unit composition. Oftentimes their secondary units were the last to rebuild, which gave lower quality to their armor and aerospace. Despite that, most of their performance has been very good. However, they do not have the reputation of Alpha or Beta for good reason. And that's the sad truth about Gamma. They are usually a lesser Dragoon unit. Once again, there's plenty of fiction that either focuses on or involves Gamma Regiment. Most of the stories are easy to find, with the exception of The Memory of Pain, which has not been republished. In addition to that, there are plenty of source books that cover the Wolf's Dragoons and their adventures. Most have deep lore, but some of them only feature location data and vague notes about what Gamma Regiment was doing at the time. Researching this video was an odd process. There is far less information about Gamma than there is for the other regiments. Not only that, but plenty of the information mirrored information I had gathered for Alpha and Beta, thus making this one of the less informative videos in the series. That is, until we reach the divergence in information that occurs during the Dragoon Civil War. I get the feeling Delta and Epsilon will have similar moments, but hopefully they will have some interesting stories to tell as well. Of all of the Wolf's Dragoons I have explored so far in this series, Gamma has the fewest reasons to build for the tabletop, unless you're a fan of the Dark Age, where they had a more active role thanks to some of the fiction. I'll likely never build a Gamma Regiment, but if you do, then more power to you and your ever-growing army of Dragoons. Next time, I will be looking at Delta Regiment. Honestly, I do not know what to expect with this one. Thankfully, making these videos is starting to become a very streamlined process, which means I'll be back very soon with the next video. A big thank you to everyone who has recently subscribed to my channel. May your weapons stay hot and your reactors stay cool. Please check out my video about wolves on the border, and until next time, I'll see you at the tavern.